is Lakshmi, host of the Heartfulness Pearl webinar series. The mind, it is a tricky thing. It can be in the past, stuck on hurts. It can be worrying about the uncertain future, your to-do list. It can be anywhere at this time, really. But meditation provides an opportunity for a time in, a chance to stop, breathe, and observe what's happening on the inside. There are many practices, but the trend of mindfulness has swept the globe in the last few decades. Likewise, the practice of heartfulness has been around for 75 years. Pranahuti, yogic transmission, is a special feature of heartfulness. Those of us who have experienced it would say it's a very potent and subtle energy and a beautiful experience. But it's really hard to describe further. So how can we explain Pranahuti to a person in a simple way? What happens when we combine it with mindfulness? That's what we'll find out in this session, Mindfulness with Pranahuti. Now let me introduce you to the two gentlemen with whom we're going to converse. VIictor Kannan is a lifelong financial executive and a director of Heartfulness, an international nonprofit organization with operating presence in over 130 countries. Having graduated with high honors, he started his management career in banking at the age of 21 and moved to USA in 1983. He has been a CFO in the high-tech space since the late 80s. As an independent thinker, he writes frequently for various magazines and blog sites. His favorite topics are spirituality, meditation, and its rational side of it. And Vasco Gaspar works as a human flourishing facilitator, inspiring change and transformation worldwide for a more human and compassionate world. Certified in a wide range of cutting-edge awareness-based technologies and trained directly by some of the world's greatest specialists in the field of mindfulness, heartfulness, presencing, IFS, and giftoism, his dream is to co-create this future, something that he has been doing with individuals, teams, and organizations all over the world. And he's also an author. I believe he has authored the book, something called Here and Now, Mindfulness, which is the actual translation of, is that an Italian book, Vasco?
It's a Portuguese book. Yeah, the name is Aqui e Agora. That's the name.
Thank you. Anyway, I'm thrilled to have you both back on the Pearl series. So how are you, Vasco? I'm going to start off with you.
Oh, thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me back into this wonderful space. And it's always a pleasure to be here, and especially today with VIictor Kannan. I feel very honored and blessed to have this opportunity to have this conversation. So everything is okay. Thank you. And you, are you okay?
Great, thank you. And how are you, VIictor?
Very well, thank you so much. And also happy to be with you and Vasco today. And it feels happy to talk about mindfulness, heartfulness, and also try to present the good side of both for people to see what they can take from it. So thank you.
Awesome. I'm excited as well. It's really a wonderful opportunity for me too. So Vasco, I have not practiced, or experienced mindful meditation myself, but what little I know and what I've heard from people, I think it's about paying attention to the present moment without being judgmental. Is that correct? How would you explain mindfulness to others?
There's a lot of ways of speaking about mindfulness, and many people speak about that capacity of being here now, being present with an attitude of curiosity and with an attitude of kindness and non-judgmental attitude. It doesn't mean that we don't have judgments. Of course, our mind is always thinking and making judgments, but it's about not being caught by those judgments, as John Kabat-Zinn says, and it's about allowing our capacity to be present, to be rooted in something larger, some kind of witness of the whole experience, with this attitude of being fully present in our bodies, in our minds, and what's around us. So having this, I would say, 360-degree awareness of what is present inside, mind and body, and what is present outside. So and basically it's being curious.
Wow. All right. Now, we often hear that, if you want to change your life, you need to change your thinking. So how exactly could you change it? We live in a world of thoughts and identify ourselves with thoughts that hold us back. Now, how do we change something that we have no control over?
Yeah. Yeah, our minds is a tricky business, and in fact, there is many ways that we can learn on how to deal with thoughts, and one of them, actually, through mindfulness, is the fact that we can become aware of the thoughts, and we can become aware that our mind, most of the time, is thinking the same way that our heart is beating, the stomach is digesting. The job of the mind is to think about the future, anticipating, what am I going to do tomorrow, or am I going to say the next sentence, or whatever, or it is thinking about the past, what I did yesterday, whatever. And that's the job of the mind most of the times. Of course, it can do many other things. And the problem is that most of our thoughts, they are somehow repetitive. And most of the times, we are almost like in autopilot. We are not aware that we are having these thoughts, and we are acting in the world almost like robots, and just going out of chasing our desires and chasing our thoughts. It's like there is this, I think it's a Buddhist parable, where they say that if you throw, I think I told you this in one of the Pearl webinars, if you throw a stick, if you have a dog and you throw a stick, so the dog chases after the stick. But if you do the same to a lion, the lion stops and looks and tries to see who threw the stick. So, and most of the times we are like that. We are like the dog chasing after the sticks, because we don't have any control. We are not rooted in a deeper place inside ourselves. But with some practices like mindfulness, heartfulness, and others, we can learn to root our awareness in a deeper place. And from that deeper place, we can become aware of the thoughts that are happening. And from that bigger awareness, we can have more choice. And some of the thoughts we can question: is this thought really true? Do I need to really act on this thought or not? And we realize that most of the thoughts are just our own mental creation, and they are based on things from the past. That imagine that you had a trauma with someone, a blonde man with a mustache. Let me use this idea: a blonde man with a mustache. So, and you had a trauma. Imagine the guy hit you with a stick when you were young, whatever, and you get some sort of trauma. And in the future, every time you meet someone in the street, blonde with a mustache, your body starts to react in a way that is. It starts to contract. Your hands start sweating, and sometimes you don't even know where am I having this sensation in my body and these thoughts about I don't like this man, and it has nothing to do with the man in front of you. It has to do with the man when you were 3 years old that hit you with a stick. So the thing is that, first of all, to become aware of these patterns that we carry with ourselves, and most of it, looking at these patterns with a lot of compassion and with a lot of space to be the space for them to be present. And then we can do things to release those same patterns, and many traditions have practices for that. Even Western psychology, if you go to a psychologist, most of the time you're going to basically try to untie the knots of the past that are blocking you in the present. So, but that implies awareness, and mindfulness can be used in many different ways. So you can use, for instance, the Buddhists have a lot of practices of mindfulness to train awareness and to use that in a very specific way. But here I'm speaking more mindfulness in the secular approach, about this capacity to become present and aware of yourself, mostly your thoughts and your bodily reactions through your senses and what you're feeling, and also to the reality. How does reality come to you, and this relationship between the outside and the inside.
Perhaps I was thinking if you can explain some of the, the neuroscience behind our emotional reactions and why, mindful practices are so helpful in managing them.
Yeah. So we can speak about, since you mentioned neuroscience, one of the most basic systems that we have on our bodies is the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system is basically what keeps us alive, and it cares for our survival, basically. So, and it's autonomic because we don't have so much access consciously to these reactions that happen mostly in the body. So basically what this system does, it takes care of your digestion, takes care of the beating of the heart, it takes care of a lot of things in your system, in the body-mind system. So imagine that you're going to the street and suddenly there's a car coming. So when you see a car coming, so normally the system activates, so this autonomic nervous system, you see the car and it activates a response. And normally it's a response of running away. It's called the sympathetic nervous system. It's like the speeder in a car. So your heart starts beating faster and you jump out of the front of the car. Hopefully on time, of not being passed by the car. So, but we also have, if you cannot run away, imagine that you are in a situation that you cannot run away, there is another branch of this system that activates, which is the kind of, think about the brakes, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. But sorry to be using these terminologies, but this system has two branches. So one is the dorsal, so it's the most primitive part. So basically, if you cannot run away from imagine a lion or a car or a fire, you're in the middle of a fire and you cannot run away, you collapse. It's like a turtle that goes inside the shelf. So you dissociate, you disconnect, you go inside, you become numb, you even sometimes fade away. So it's called the freeze or faint response. So this is two extremes of the response. But there is another response also from the parasympathetic, which is the ventral, which is what allows us here, me, you, and VIictor, to be in contact, to feel connected, to feel safe. And when we feel safe, we have access to the part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex that allows us to think correctly, to have ideas, and so on. For instance, if you ask me a question that I felt somehow threatened by, imagine you could ask me a question, I didn't know the answer, maybe my heart could start beating more faster, imagine, and I couldn't have not access to this part of my brain because it would be shut down because you activated in me a survival response. And in terms of survival, thinking is not something that we need so much. We need to run away or we need to collapse. So we fight, flight, freeze, or faint. So these are the options. There are many other options. But if I'm aware, coming back to the awareness and mindfulness, if I'm aware, imagine that you ask me a question, I don't know the answer, I notice my heart beating faster. So the system is trying to protect me because there's a perceived threat that I don't know this answer and I'm going to be, I don't know, doing a bad figure in front of a lot of people. But if I'm aware of that, I can use what is called the vagal brake. I could notice the heart beating, so awareness of something that is autonomic, and I can notice that, and I could put a brake. So I could still use that energy of the adrenaline that is in my body, but in a way that is useful without losing my capacity to think about. So there are many other structures like the amygdala and so on, but I would suggest that we don't go so much technical because I don't know if that's what people want to, but I'm available to, in my limited understanding, to share what I know. But just this awareness of how we have these three kind of responses just gives a lot of space to know that, oh, I'm in this space of complete collapse. I need to do something. If this answer is not useful, because sometimes it's not useful, but I'm having this response. So what can I do? And by knowing, I can choose a different response. So that's
Thank you, Vasco.
I mean,
this answer was great. Thank you. Now, moving on to heartfulness, it is a heart-based meditation practice. While, as Vasco said, incorporating all the benefits of mindfulness, it takes us even deeper into the realm of the center of our human existence, the heart. Now, this question is for you, VIictor. Is heartfulness the new mindfulness? Are they related? What's its philosophy?
I don't think we can say that heartfulness is the new mindfulness, because like Vasco has concluded, it is going to have some overlaps. It's going to have some natural beginnings and natural transition. And so I would say that many of the things that we do in mindfulness are applicable to heartfulness. And many of the things that we aim to achieve through heartfulness would be complementary to mindfulness, and also, if I may say so, evolutionary to the goals one has. If one starts with mindfulness and assume the goal keeps evolving, and there will come a time they will naturally choose heartfulness, because now heartfulness will begin to resonate more in terms of meeting their expectations. And people that start with heartfulness, they are also asked to be aware. They are also asked to be thoughtful, pause, non-reactive. And we also have some techniques in terms of recognizing the past patterns of behavior. And then these techniques will allow them to reprogram them, if you will. So I think the best way to answer this question is that heartfulness and mindfulness can be complementary. And heartfulness, because of its spiritual component, could complement the spiritual component of mindfulness. So I think it is complementary, and as one practices, they should be able to determine as to what tool sets are going to be useful to them, and there's going to be a mixing up going on in the future.
Now, going further, we have heard and read that our individual thoughts, attitudes, and emotions emit energetic fields, and they affect not only us, but influence our relationships at work, home, wherever we are. Now, could you elaborate on that? Can we change our individual, social, and even planetary environments and create the one in which we choose to live?
I think so. And I think one has a much better control over one's own environment than the universal environment, in terms of the connection. Individual change is aggregated towards universal change, right? If I try to change the universe, I think it's too big a task. And it could even be a fool's errand. But if I am able to ask myself, hey, what are the things that I can change in me, right? It can even start from the physical environment that I live in. Can I keep my bedroom clean? Start there, right? Can I keep my house clean? Can I keep my body clean? Can I keep my inner environment clean, right? So what is the benefit of that cleanliness, right? So you can go from cleanliness to purity over a period of time, because some people don't understand the term purity in its rational sense. Because of the religious connotation, they have a little bit of a misunderstanding. But if you start with cleanliness, right, you can start from your physical environment to your spiritual environment. And then if you keep it clean, and that cleanliness gives you the freshness, the energy, right, with which you can now be open to what is possible in the universe. So in order to change the universe, I think we got to start from within. And in order to start from within, we just have to become aware of our environment, aware of myself, and then honestly list the things that I want to change. Now, If somebody can begin that process at home, within one's own heart, within one's own self, they have a much better chance of effecting a universal change than just going out to change the world. And I live in a universe around me, right? Meaning my family, my friends, my workplace. In a way, that's a mini universe that I live in. So if I'm able to make a change within myself, I do believe that some of that will extend to my immediate universe, right? And if each one of us is able to do that, then a bigger change is possible. So that is the crux of heartfulness movement anyway. If people understand it properly, it goes from the center to the circumference. And depending upon our growing potential, the circumference continues to expand.
Beautifully said, actually. Now it makes me think the world leader of heartfulness, he often talks about designing destiny, right? But it all starts from within. Now, a meaningful life is always about compassion and giving. Does heartfulness allow us to expand the world of thoughts to the world of feeling, from intellectual celebration to empathy? How do you see that transformation happening?
I think, again, it goes back to understanding that we are all connected with each other. I mean, that interconnectedness as a fact must be fully established in one's heart. And it is not only an intellectual or sentimental fact or emotion, but it has to become a deeper level of understanding, a deeper level of feeling or realization. And it's a little bit deeper idea, and it takes probably a long time to establish an influence of interconnectedness. I mean, you mentioned in your previous question the energetic field, and now you have quantum mechanics and quantum entanglements, and all of those things are coming to in the physical realm. They are trying to prove that a whole that is divided into two parts, irrespective of the distance, can resonate based upon an impulse on one side, one part of the whole, which automatically gets communicated to the other part of the whole. Simple, right? Atomic. If you take that into cosmic, right, and then have this idea that all of us that are manifested, all of that life that is manifested, all of the non-living material things that are manifested, and even those so-called non-living material things have atoms that are very dynamic. There are particles moving about, so there is activity in the so-called inactive dead table. So there is activity that is seen, activity that is felt, and that the activity that we cannot see. But there is activity, and that activity is part of this energetic field that you talked about. And if there is a field, the field is always connected. And the particles in the field vibrate based upon what goes through that field. And so from self, if I can emanate a thought of that quality, and that quality of thought takes a vibration of its own, goes through this field and affects all the particles in the field, and those particles begin to capture that energy and begin to dance, so to speak, can you imagine the influence it can have? So the idea of compassion, the idea of universal love, and the idea of caring for each other again starts from one's own heart. You can think in terms of intention, but intention with skill or capacity, and that's where the responsibility comes. Building up my capacity to promote my intention is responsibility. And so when I combine intention and improve my capacity, then let it go, right? Because now nature takes over. Because this is a principle. That energetic field that you talked about, Lakshmi, is a principle. You know, people are discovering it, and we are talking about it. And so if you are able to plug into that with this positive, regenerative, universal love and compassion and universal well-being and universal happiness and prosperity and abundance, all those things are going to be transmitted in this energetic field that we are all part of as particles. And that is how I think we will probably create a new world.
Mm.
But it takes a long time. It takes more people to have the correct thinking and right understanding and to participate in it wholeheartedly over a long period of time.
Very profound, explanation, VIictor. It all starts, it makes me connect what Vasco had said earlier on about, being mindful and starting from that deep place within. And then, as you beautifully expanded, the interconnection between all, right? And of course, but it all starts from within. So, beautiful. Now, I think I'm going back to Vasco now. Let's talk a little bit about the tools and practices of mindfulness. You did mention earlier that John Kabat-Zinn, I believe in 1979, he designed, the mindful-based stress reduction program for people who hadn't responded to traditional medical treatments, right? I mean, can you say that kind of like a source of mindfulness? More so, what I want to know is, what are some of the other practices that mindfulness offers?
Mm. Well, there's a huge array of practices, and it really depends on the protocols. So once again, coming back to the secular approach to mindfulness, there is different protocols that are used according to what you are working. For instance, Kabat-Zinn developed this MBSR, which is mindfulness-based stress reduction. That, as you said, was used with people that they tried everything and it was not working. In most of these people, what they had was chronic pain. So chronic pain, but for instance, the MBCT protocol uses mindfulness more in the relapse of depression. Or for instance, I'm connected with a program called Search Inside Yourself, which uses mindfulness to develop emotional intelligence. So, but normally there is some practices that are, let's call it basic, that normally you find in different protocols. So like awareness of the breath, so rooting your attention in the breath and just noticing the breath coming in and out, and noticing that you naturally, your mind thinks and you become aware of the thought process, and then when that happens, you bring it back to the breath, not in a forceful way, but in a very gentle and in a very really recognizing that you are not here anymore. And so it's like more a focused attention practice in the breath, but it can also be in the body, like a body scan where you notice, how is your left toe now? So how is your right knee? So, and you just notice without trying to change. So the idea is not, for instance, to change the experience, but it's just noticing, how is my left shoulder now? And I can, oh, there's a pain in my left shoulder. And the idea normally when you notice a pain is I don't like the pain, I want to push it back. So, and that is where normally suffering comes from. It's not from the pain itself, which is just some contraction or expansion of some part of my body that is creating some sort of experience inside. But it's about, I don't want this pain, and I contract that part, which therefore creates more pain, and I try to push it even further. So actually there is this funny story from Kabat-Zinn when he did his first program. There was this man that came in a wheelchair because he had so much pain in his legs, he could not walk. So he was in a wheelchair. And after 8 weeks of this program, which includes mindfulness of the breath, mindfulness of the body, some asanas, some postures, asanas, mindfulness of the thoughts, so many different practices. So after 8 weeks, the man was walking with a cane So was not in a wheelchair anymore, was walking with a, I think it's a
Wow.
cane, right? A cane.
Yeah.
And he asked, so what happened to your pain? And he said, oh, the pain is exactly the same. What changed was my relationship with the pain. So the pain was the same. So through these different practices, you get to know more about your body, you get to know more about your mind, you get to know more about the senses. So there are practices that are more, let's say it, attention focused on one object. And there are others that are much more expensive, like there is meditation, for instance, without an object. So where you just hold your awareness of everything now. So and you just root your presence in the moment now, as it is, without trying to change that moment. And basically, I like to think that these practices are, they help you to connect with your basic humanity. So what it is to be a human being in this human body with these imperfections, with these things, this mind that sometimes annoys you and have thoughts that you don't like, or this pain in my body, or this neighbor that is screaming in the other room, whatever. So and being in relationship in with that experience in the moment, there is a relationship that comes from a place of sanity, that comes from a place of compassion, that comes from a place of curiosity. Doesn't mean that you're not going to act on what you notice. Imagine if you notice that you have contracted your leg, and if you relax, you're going to become better. Of course, you're going to relax. It's the natural wisdom of the moment to relax something that you are contracting without the need. So there are many practices.
You know, you touched upon this. In mindfulness, there are certain practices, but then not all of them lead to an action. Now, I'm thinking, is mindfulness enough in and of itself for people to transform? If there isn't an action, how can people, how can that transformation happen?
I think that it depends what you mean by transformation, but just the simple fact of becoming aware that you are in autopilot, just that simple fact that you're going to do something that it comes from a pattern, a pattern of the past, just
Good
that
point.
awareness creates space between you and the response. And Viktor Frankl, he was a survivor of the Holocaust. Some people attribute this sentence to him, although he was not the one who said it, but it's attributed to him. It's like this sentence that between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space lies our capacity to choose a response. And in our response lies our happiness, our freedom. So it's more or less like this. I'm not paraphrasing correctly. But it's this notion that awareness in itself is larger enough to create awareness and to allow your consciousness to evolve also. So it can be, it can take time for sure. And you can, for instance, just give you an example, the MBCT program, which is more using cognitive therapy with mindfulness. So with mindfulness, you become aware of your thought processes. And then with cognitive therapy, you question some of those beliefs and you acquire new behaviors. But the mindfulness is there in the sense of increasing the awareness around your thought patterns, and then you choosing new ones that are more healthy, and so on. So it depends on transformation. If you mean transformation, I don't know, enlightenment or so, I would not say so, unless you are in a I don't know, a Buddhist path where you have not only mindfulness, but you have many other things. But I'm not the right person to speak about that, because that's not I don't have experience deep enough to speak about that. Yeah.
No worries at all, Vasco. It was still a great answer. Transformation, I was thinking in terms of, most of the people who join or who are looking for spiritual practices, we all want to become a better person. Not enlightenment is not the goal for many of us. So in that sense, I was trying to say, how mindfulness will take us there. But I'm going to ask the same question to, VIictor, slightly in a different way. we talked about how to regulate our thoughts through meditation, and how to become present and aware. But then, as we did talk earlier on, the bigger problem does exist. How do we work with our patterns and fear, our desires and emotional baggage that's embedded in our subconscious minds?
Yeah, I think this question for heartfulness takes you to the science of yoga. It's just not only the science, neuroscience of the mind and the brain and the physiology and the neurology of things, but also it takes you into the science of yoga. Not that the other things are excluded from it, but now the science of yoga talks more about your consciousness. What are the components of consciousness? And one of the components of consciousness is the mind. And the mind has got several subcomponents. And one of the subcomponents of the mind is memory. And now, memory is of the past, right? And if you create a circular time, then the memory can also be memory of the future. But now we will just talk about time in a linear fashion and say that the linear time relating to memory is the memory of the past, right? And now, how memory is stacked in your consciousness is, again, you can say it's a combination of chronology and intensity. So if there is an algorithmic component or a factor for the chronology of an event and the intensity of that event, right? The intensity includes the input, the reaction, and the combination thereof, let us say. That's intensity. And the chronology is when it happened, right? Did it happen yesterday? Did it happen when you were in the womb of your mother? Or did it happen sometime past, right? Of course, this will lead you into the topics of reincarnation, right? And then that will lead you to the topic of continuity of life, separate from the embodiment of that life. So these are all the signs of yoga, and heartfulness does take you to those inquiries, to those explorations. Now, coming to the question of tendency or a pattern, right, of behavior, what is the root of it, right? The root of it is a memory and an attached behavior to it, right? And so, like he was talking about the story of a blonde man with a mustache, right? So that is an exemplification of how your current consciousness misconstrues, right, or simplifies. Now it can even link to neurology, because people do say the brain wants to do things easily.
That's
right?
Mm.
So it would rather not identify the exact person, but kind of take you to the closest approximation. And because the life's first job is survival, it takes the approximation and instantaneously gives you the survival hormones. And so this repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats. And if the consequence of this repetition or this reenactment, right, later on comes to figure out that I misidentified a threat, right? Now, you have a choice again. If you realize that you misidentified the threat, you have now time to reprogram yourself. If you do not, then it becomes more complex than that.
Mm.
Now, how does heartfulness help in terms of changing that pattern of behavior? Apart from pausing, apart from being aware, apart from accepting, now you seek help, right? Now you have to become aware, accept, recognize the issue, and now I seek help. Now, while seeking help, suppose you seek help with a mindfulness professional, you do the mindfulness tools. If you seek help from a heartfulness professional or a trainer, there are some tools. One of the tools is what we call as cleaning or rejuvenation. It is done at 3 levels of efficiency, I would say. The first level is done by the individuals, where they basically meditate for about 20 to 30 minutes every day, imagining that all of the previous impressions are going away from the back. It is a combination of a willful autosuggestion with autogenic feature of rejuvenation. And so this cleaning technique, when he was talking about the dorsal and ventral, in fact, this cleaning has a dorsal to ventral impact, in terms of the cleaning process. Anybody that has been doing heartfulness practice, they know that this process goes from the front to the back, and then one can feel the lightening of the self. And when we do this every day, that is the first level of efficiency. The second deeper level of efficiency is when this is done with the help of a trainer. And the third level of efficiency, or a deeper level of cleaning, happens when we are able to sit together in a group and when we are sit together with a master trainer. And so that's how it goes. And the personal experience, what makes us feel convinced about this system of reprogramming. Now, cleaning is only one part. Suppose you have a glass and you want to clean the glass, you pour it, clean it, throw it away, and now you refill it, right, with something that you wanted in there. So we have this cleaning process, and also we have, normally in meditation, we take up a positive regenerative thought. And what kind of a regenerative thought you want to take? Some people take love, some people take light, some people take generosity and, compassion. Now you can meditate on any of those things, and it will have a positive regenerative effect if you are able to, put it in your heart, rest your entire, feeling on it. But the one thing that we can all do is to take the ultimate idea. Why not take the ultimate idea, right? Is there a source for everything? Did everything come from that one place? Everybody is looking for that one thing, in terms of a unified theory, or that one thing that you can learn, from which you can learn every other thing possible. So I think it's a very aspirational thought to take up that one thing, one thought. So why not we think that we all came from a source, and let's explore how it would be like, right? They say that every child is the father of man, or every daughter wants to be like a mother. So why not we, as created being, want to feel what a creator, feels like?
That's right.
It does not have to go into a religious connotation. It can still remain in the domain of human curiosity. Simply asking the question, where did we come from? Every child asks the question, where did I come from, right? How did I come into being? That is an innocent, curious question. Why not we develop that into an intelligent, conscious, search? And to me, it is no more complex than that human curiosity. And if we do not have that, then we are preoccupied with the material, body-oriented, aspects of life. So how do we change our tendency? Have a bigger aspiration. Have a bigger problem to solve. And ask ourselves, how can I become aware? How can I become how can I accept my weaknesses? Where can I look for help? And how do I implement that help and move along in terms of looking for bigger and bigger help to solve a bigger and bigger problem, or achieve a better and higher goals?
Wonderful, VIictor. Now, I was going to ask you, can heartfulness be practiced anywhere? Work, home, of course, home. But is there a specific place and time recommended for it?
No, I've been practicing. Yeah, this is a fascinating question. And if you ask me the same question, hopefully in the next 5 years, I would have a different answer. the reason I'm saying this to you is that there is a lot of people meditating for a long time, and I have my own share. And we talked about the quantum particles or quantum entanglement, right? Assume that there are two parts to that quantum part, right? Let's say it's a whole. It's a whole, and now it is into two parts. Now, suppose this part is not in full resonance with the other part, right? There will be a delay in terms of their, entanglement, right? In terms of the movement and things like that. But as both become resonant, right? If both become fully resonating with each other, then there is no delay. Now, practicing heartfulness takes you from a totally non-resonant connection to a fully resonant connection. Now, the practice is in the activating of the non-resonance into complete resonance. And when you reach the complete resonance, it is an effortless effort, or it is effortless. It is continuous. And what happens to the practice when it is effortless? The practice goes on continuously, right? What does it mean? The two parts of the whole are constantly connected. And that to me is the promise of heartfulness. And that to me is an exciting place to go to. And once you have a taste of it, you want more and more of it. And that's how I would say heartfulness goes so deep into one's being. And so the practice can be done by anybody, anywhere, at any time. And the practice becomes you over a longer period of time. And to be more earthly and realistic with his answer, anybody can start the practice, and there are several ways to start the practice. There are self-service videos available, guided practices available. You can get a trainer online. You can have a phone call with a trainer. You can meditate with a trainer. And so heartfulness is available, and it is always taught free. The tradition that you talked about, the 75-year-old tradition of heartfulness, is so deep and rich that this particular art of meditation and self-transformation has been made available by the founders for free for everyone.
How beautiful, right?
Can
I just say something? More than free is a gift.
Yes, I understand. I think people
Truly.
don't value the term free that much, so it's a gift. It is. I think we need to perhaps either talk about the word free from the point of view of mother's love and sunshine and the air that we breathe, more than come on free, and after 3 months you got to pay the premium.
Right.
Yeah. To upgrade, you need to upgrade now.
And from what you say, it's definitely a very simple practice that anybody can try without a lot of expense to start with, right? In a sense, we don't need a particular dress or mat or nothing like that, just the willingness.
And also the goal. You can have any goal that you want to take. You can take the simplest goal of stress management and increasing your focus, avoiding burnout that Vasco talked about.
True.
And also explore hey, what is my consciousness? How are my components of my consciousness evolving, right?
That's
How
right.
is my ego evolving? How is my thinking evolving, right? So I think it's a very, very deep and rich and varied practice.
That's right. Quite profound. Yeah.
So I wish more and more people will take it up and then continue on. Start from wherever you have the need felt, but continue on.
That's right. Thank you, Victor. Now, the next question, what I was thinking is Kamlesh T. Patel, who is the global guide of heartfulness and who is affectionately called as Daji, he has emphasized several times on the heartfulness communication. Now, what does he mean by that?
I mean, it is a beautiful and again yet another simple thing that we all humans should practice, right? I mean, treat others as you would like to be treated by. Simple, right?
That's right. The
Love
golden rule.
love thy neighbor as thyself. Again, one of the golden rules. So why would we not communicate with others as we would like to be communicated to, right? So, but again, it has to be brought to the awareness because we slip into unaware behavior based upon our tendency, right? Based upon this, flight, fight, freeze mode of neural, programming. And so, heartful communication is yet another way we express ourselves to people, we behave with people, and at the end of the day, if you again continue to cultivate the inner calmness, the inner connectedness, with this factual understanding that I am connected with the other, right? I need them as much as perhaps they need me, right? So if I need them, how would I approach them? So I would like to approach them similarly. So heartful communication, we all have heard of non-violent communication, right? So it is similar, but again, I would say it is yet another facet of communicating with people as if you are communicating with yourself.
Thank you, Victor. Now, I'm going to move on back to you, Vasco. Just going a little bit further, and Victor mentioned about consciousness and expansion of consciousness. Now, this consciousness is quite a popular topic in neuroscience and cognitive psychology these days. Now, is consciousness the same as mindfulness? Do you think, consciousness creates reality? What's your thought on that?
That's such a huge question. I think in neuroscience that's the hard question about consciousness and what is consciousness and how consciousness evolves and so on. And I think, for instance, yogic psychology has much more to give to the world regarding consciousness than Western psychology. What I know about consciousness and what attracts me and links to this dialogue that we are having is the notion of evolution of consciousness. For instance, there is this psychologist I think it was in the 60s more or less, called Claire W. Graves. So he basically mapped the different levels of consciousness that we humans go through. The same way as Piaget, the psychologists mapped the levels of consciousness of a child. So what Claire Graves and others discover is that we continue to evolve. And basically what this means is that as we evolve, we become more aware. It's like our circle. So Victor, you were mentioning about expanding the circle. So in the first levels of consciousness, imagine of a child, the whole universe is the child's needs. Everything is about the child. It's about my needs. It's about eating. It's about. But as we grow, we become our consciousness evolves to include the family, and then it evolves to include our group, and then it evolves to include. So we can evolve, and one philosopher called Ken Wilber. He studies a lot these levels of consciousness and the Claire Graves model and others, and Aurobindo's models, the levels of consciousness. And one thing he says about that I enjoy is that in spiritual life, there is these different things. So one is about waking up. So it's about waking up to other realities, waking up to our own reality, to waking up to different levels of consciousness. And another thing is, imagine, for instance, you have a meditation, you have a profound experience, and that's the experience of waking up. But that is normally, you don't stay there. So you can have a profound experience of samadhi during a meditation, and you could, but then you go back to your normal life and you start yelling at your husband and just, where is this enlightened state of mind that I achieved? So, but you get a glimpse. So there's this glimpse of waking up, of a possibility that you can grow. And then the second thing is about actually growing up. And by growing up is about, as you evolve, your consciousness will evolve and you become aware, you are able to become aware of more things. So you can become aware of the whole planet as a being. And you can connect with that field of a planet or even the universe. So cosmic consciousness, you can evolve your consciousness to that. But also, one thing he speaks about, it's not only about waking up and growing up, but it's about the importance of cleaning up. So cleaning up. So as VIictor was saying, practices in Heartfulness is practice of cleaning, because otherwise you cannot grow up. If you have a huge burden and you want to float, so the burden will not allow you to float so well. So you need to let go of some of the burdens in order for you to grow up. So the importance of cleaning up. And sometimes he also speaks about showing up in the sense of bringing your gifts, offering your gifts into the world. So as you evolve and your consciousness evolve and your responsibility with that also evolve, your action also needs to come from that space in the sense of serving. So you are at service of something larger and so on. So that's what comes when I think about consciousness. I think it's not the same thing as mindfulness or awareness. What I believe is that these practices help to grow consciousness, and therefore you become more aware of more things. You can include more things in your heart as you expand. You can hold more, and that's a process. And some practices, they are more slow, like step by step. In other practices, they are faster. And I think, for instance, features like Pranahuti, it's like a catalyst for, it's like taking a lift instead of going through the stairs, which is okay. You can go through the stairs, but you can also take a lift, and whoa, that's faster, and it can. So that's what comes to mind with your question.
No, thank you, Vasco. Actually, you kind of neatly set it up for the next question, which I was going to, ask VIictor. And I think this is kind of the core of this webinar also. Is prana, breath, different from pranahuti? How can we experience it? And there's also, there were a few questions all in one. You can answer them in parts. How is pranahuti also connected to consciousness that Vasco was talking about, and transformation that we've been talking about all throughout in this webinar?
Prana, of course, the simple translation is breath or life, or prani is, a creature. So that in the Sanskrit word, prana has got a couple of meanings that I am aware of. I'm sure there are more meanings assigned to that word. So when you say prana, it is, you can say life, breath, energy, right? And ahuti is to infuse. So pranahuti is more than prana, right? So pranahuti is to infuse life energy into life, right? So that is a little bit of a, we have to unpack that. So if you are already alive, what is it that is being infused into us? The religious corollary would be the twice born. or baptism, or there are so many other practices that gives you a ritual, or that puts you through a ritual to give you this awareness that now you can search for something higher. You can now search for a higher life or a higher purpose or a higher meaning. So that is the ritualistic aspect of it. But to accept pranahuti is in a way to allow ourselves to be reawakened, re-energized, right? And what happens when you are awakened and when you begin to re-energize, then the transformation process starts. And what is the transformation? The transformation of you as a self. And that can be likened to you as your consciousness, right? So the transformation of yourself is the same as transformation of your consciousness. And that is instigated, inspired, and continued by this transmission or pranahuti, or the life energy that is being infused into us. And it's a constant thing, right? It is not a one-off thing, right? Because once we are born into this world, we continue to live. Similarly, once we are awakened to a higher possibility or to the spiritual possibility, you continue to pursue that higher aspiration. So it's a continuous thing, it's a daily thing. And now, so for that we need to be open constantly to receive it. And what is the openness? It is nothing more than the interest that we take in the pursuit of that higher goal. Again, it is the self. So when we do that, we are embarking upon this transformation, and it accelerates. The transformation is not linear. It can be exponential. And this transformation is the self transformation, which can be called as the evolution of consciousness. And now, we have to parse these things in order for us to fully fathom it. Again, I said consciousness has components, right? It has got ego, it has got intellect, it has got mind, and each one of them have their own subcomponents, and a combination of this becomes big wheel of consciousness, or wheel of emotions that you might have seen. And so, the pranahuti is a very critical factor in it. How do we understand it intellectually? Again we go back to your question of energetic field, right? There are so many types of energetic field, right? Magnetic, gravitational, and electrical. And also, people are now talking about thought as energy. There is, I forget the name of the author, but he has written a book called No More Secrets. So in that he says that the thought, when you think and release it, it has got a megahertz of electrical energy. And that can go on in the field, and anybody can catch it. So if you think secret thought, there is no guarantee that that thought would remain secret. It can be caught by anybody, used by anybody. This also goes to prove the 100th monkey theory, right? And also it kind of is in the realm of telepathy. And now, the energetic field is, let's say, it's a field, it conducts several types of energy. The same energetic field is also capable of conducting this divine energy or transmission, or the energy that has got the subtlest of particles, right? In Sanskrit, they can be called paramanus, right? Greatest of the smallest, right? Particle. Now, if we are able to tangibly feel it, that's the proof, right? Nobody needs to measure it. I mean, of course, hopefully one day there will be a tool that can measure it. But today we don't have the tool to measure it. We cannot deny the things that we cannot measure or we cannot understand. So, but personal experience is something more convincing than any other theoretical knowledge. So this pranahuti, or transmission, is an energy of the subtlest nature which connects the part to the whole. And that connection has to be felt by the part because it is coming from the whole. And so once the part, that is me, the self, right, begins to connect with it, feel it, understand it, appreciate it, and need it, you can actually invoke transmission anytime on demand. And so when that happens, and sometimes it feels like to me that you are in it, whether you wanted it or not. And so that's the beauty of this system of practice, where it gives you the possibility to recognize that there is the subtlest energy that can ennoble your life, that can transform your vision, and that can support your journey so that you can reach that place and enjoy both the journey and the destination. And I think heartfulness is underspoken, less known, but it's one of the things that I welcome people to and try out for minimum 90 days and then stick with it, because it does take a long time for the part to begin to change its characteristic so that it can now resonate with the whole. Right? Once you resonate with the whole, you are no longer apart.
That's right. And I don't know if there can be another answer. So beautifully explaining Pranahuti, wonderfully well said, actually. And that, as you are also talking, it makes me think, now as the expansion of consciousness is happening through the practice of heartfulness, do we eventually have access to the, our subconscious and the superconscious minds?
I think so, because the super subconsciousness, if we combine it, right? Of course, sub is below, super is above, but nothing is separate, it's all combined. And then the consciousness is where you have the awareness, you have all of the interactions and transactions, so to speak, right? And so when the consciousness, right, when I talk about not the consciousness, the components of consciousness, but being conscious in the present, when you are in the present, right, totally calm, then you are open to both the super and the sub. And now, I don't know how it works, but you are open to intuitive knowledge. You are also open to the aha moments, right? The revelations, so to speak. Where do revelations come from? Where do your intuitive knowledge come from, right? You can say instinct to some extent, but we can refine it and say it is intuitive. But at the same time, where do you get the revelatory knowledge, right? All of a sudden, I never thought of that before. It occurred to me. How did that happen? Right? So, if we keep our present consciousness calm and quiet and silent, at the same time aware and alert, right? A participating witness. But, when I say participating witness, it's not a disinterested witness, but an interested witness who is recording everything. And at the same time, when the time comes for action, the witness becomes an actor. What happens? You are acting from a place of pure knowledge, and your action will be pure because the knowledge is pure and the intention is pure, right? And your goal is pure. And so that's what happens when we are able to continue to refine our consciousness in the present and then let it move up and down and impact your super and subconsciousness in terms of its calmness, depth, clarity, simplicity. Then what happens in the present, you now have access to both.
Very enlightening answer, Victor. Such, very profound as well. I think at this point we should, experience all that you've been talking about, Pranahuti and, the mindfulness, awareness as well. Left alone to us, I think this conversation can go on and on. So why don't we, dive into the experience part of this?
Seems a good idea. Yeah.
So Vasco, do you want to, start off?
Yeah, I can start, and I just want to give an overview of what we are going to do. Some people like to have parts that like to make sense of things, so I'm just going to speak for those parts that people like to understand, so the people that are more cognitive. So I'm going to guide an awareness practice that goes from the outside world. So we're going to first become aware of our senses, and then I'm going to invite us to come a little bit closer, turn the attention inwards, notice the body, and just going to notice some different parts of the body. And if you find some tension, feel free to release that tension. Then we're going to dive a little bit into the inner world, noticing the thoughts that are there, emotions, energy level. And then we're going to dive into the heart. And at that moment, I will pass it through VIictor, and VIictor will say for us to start a meditation, and then we're going to be in silence for some time, and then he is going to, during that time, to be sharing the Pranahuti that we've been speaking about, and then he's going to stop. I don't know, VIictor, if you want to add something to the process for people that want to understand a little bit, or some suggestions for them.
Yeah, this is a good experiment, Vasco. We will start off with mindfulness practice of awareness and breathing and relaxation, and then move them to rest in their hearts, and then remain open to whatever the transmission may feel like for them. Again, it depends on if somebody has been practicing heartfulness for a long time or any other meditation system, they will have a different type of experience, and anybody that is starting, they may have a different type of experience. But it is just a start or a taste, right? And so, like I said, it takes time to resonate with it, but this will be like a sampler.
Yeah. It's going to be an experiment, and I'm excited to try it out. Okay, and just be curious, everyone. Just be curious and open, as VIictor was saying, and receptive. And so don't try to achieve anything special. Just be curious and open. Okay, so just going to notice the time for us not to go after the time. So I invite us to find a posture that allows us to be alert and relaxed at the same time. Adjusting the body and maybe even taking a long breath. And allowing the attention to be turned to the outside world. Just noticing how does the world comes through the senses. The sounds, the smells, the luminosity in the room. The touch of your body with the chair or with the cushion. Just noticing the world around, and if you want, you can even search in your environment for some cue of safety, something that tells your system that it's safe to close your eyes and go in for a while. And from that safe space, Gently turning the attention inward to the physical body. And just start by noticing how is the body at this moment. For instance, how's the breath? It can be fast, slow, the chest or in the belly. Bringing curiosity to the physical body, the lower part, from the feet to the all the way up, just the lower part, noticing how's the legs, the feet, and if for some reason you find any part that might hold some tension that you don't need now at this moment for the practice, feel free to invite that tension to release. And moving upward to noticing the belly, the chest, the back. The shoulders and the arms and the hands, so the middle part of the body. Just being curious without reacting to what's there, but just bringing curiosity and kindness. Noticing the breath happening. And noticing that you don't need to breathe. The breath simply happens. Also being curious about the top of the body, the neck, the throat, the jaws, the whole face, and especially the eyes and the forehead. Just noticing if there is any tension. Sometimes we contract. We hold unnecessary tension. So just being curious. The back of the head to the top of the head. Just noticing if it's possible to feel the whole body breathing without any effort, just being present. Maybe even feeling some sort of gratefulness for this body that keeps me alive. Diving a little deeper into the inner world, and just for some 30 seconds or so, just notice the thoughts that you're having, emotions, or other movements inside the inner world, without trying to change the thoughts, but just as if they were clouds passing in the sky. And you're just noticing them with curiosity and kindness and spaciousness around them. Now gently dropping your attention into the heart, without any effort, just letting the attention be attracted to the source of light in the heart as I pass to VIictor to conduct the rest of the practice with us.
Thank you, Vasco. Now let's continue to remain focused on the heart. Be restful and waiting. If the mind wanders, gently remind yourself that you are meditating on the source of light within your heart. We will meditate like this for the next 7 to 10 minutes. That's all. And when you feel comfortable, you can gently open your eyes. So Lakshmi, thank you.
Thank you both for this beautiful experience of mindfulness to heartfulness meditation. Thoroughly enjoyed it, very profound. And I hope, people's inquisitiveness is convinced through this session. And they will continue to do meditation with Pranahuti or transmission. And VIictor, as you beautifully explained Pranahuti, understanding it intellectually is one thing, and experiencing it, the essence of it is a totally different feeling. And I thoroughly enjoyed this interview with both of you. And I hope everyone found it useful and beneficial as well. Thank you, audience, for joining us. And as VIictor had mentioned earlier, if you'd like to try heartfulness meditation, do visit our website, heartfulness.org. You will see it on the screen. Click on the Heart Spots tab, and you will be able to find a trainer in your place or closest to your place. You can also download the app, Hearts app, and that's another way to get in touch with a trainer across the globe, no matter where you are. You can also reach us through the toll-free number, or just shoot an email to pearl@heartfulness.org, and we will connect you with someone. Please remember to subscribe to the Heartfulness Pearl YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any webinars or interesting announcements. Also, kindly like and comment and share our Facebook Live if this webinar has made a difference to your life. So I look forward to seeing you soon. Until then, take care. Bye for now. Namaste.